Hey, this is Mark Swash, MTC Media, wrapping up Georgetown's loss last night to Marquette. The Hoyas fall 68-64 in what was a frustrating loss, yet a loss that shows you how far this team has come, and a loss that shows you how tough and resilient this team is becoming. Once again, the Hoyas were without um, Jaden Epps, who is still out with that ankle injury. So if you read my pregame, first thing I want to do is go back through what I thought the keys was. And we'll start with keeping Marquette off of the foul line, which just did not it did not happen. Now I know some of these fouls came late, not too many of them, but they came late. But when you look at the team stats, uh, 21 free throw attempts for Marquette. And that was something that Georgetown needed to control. They couldn't get into the bonus early. They couldn't get into the penalty early. They could not have these just bad fouls. And we saw it all night. You know Marquette's going to reach. There was a couple times Sorber picked up a bad foul when Marquette reached and the ball popped out and then he reached back. Now, I can always say that if you didn't call that foul on Stevie Mitchell, who obviously fouled, Sorber, when Sorber reaches back in and punches it up, and then you call it on Sorber, that's a little agitating. But it was like little fouls like that, the terrible foul, Drew Fielder's illegal screen, which was absolutely positively unnecessary. Because once again, Stevie Mitchell was staring at the ball, which I didn't understand that either. And I know his probably thought was, oh, they're going to try to get a quick two at the front of the rim. So he actually stayed in help. When the baseline cut from Mac came, he actually stayed in help too long and had lost his guy. He was at least 2 steps behind because he was staring at the ball. And so it was like little fouls like that throughout the game, little reaches, 3-point plays, and those things. Those were the things that Georgetown needed to avoid, especially if this game was going to come down to the end. And it certainly did come down to the end. Get in the paint via the dribble. I thought in the first half, Georgetown did this very well. They gained real estate off of the bounce, which was part of the reason why they were successful against Marquette. They were taking advantage of driving lanes. The ball was moving. Guys were cutting and all these sort of things. So it looked beautiful. The problem with Georgetown is when they don't get real estate off of the dribble, then it turns into over dribbling going nowhere. And now guys are at their 5th and 6th dribble, literally. And then it looks like a bad, 7th grade rec game that you see on a Saturday morning, which is why they need to gain real estate with it. And you saw Marquette near the end of the first half going to the second half, their drives consistently gain real estate. And then you can break down the defense that way, whether you make the initial shot or not. Sometimes that leads to an offensive rebound. That leads to a kick out opposite into a 3. All of those things. And I thought in the first half they did a good job. In the second half, the game got more physical out on the perimeter. You saw how chippy it got between the two teams. And Georgetown quit getting real estate off of the dribble. And part of it is, and I know everyone's probably tired of hearing this. I know they're tired of hearing it when Cooley says it because I'm starting to hear little comments about it. They're young guys. Those guys are young. Mac is still young. Those guys are young. PV's the exception to the rule. PV's not young. But those guys are young. And they're learning. And you should be thankful, if you're a Georgetown fan, you should be thankful that at least they're learning this way to what has happened in the previous generation. But when they quit gaining real estate, you saw what happened, right? The offense breaks down. They can't get Thomas Sorber the ball. Because when they did get him the ball, he was really, really good. And Sorber also was going to have to just learn how to be strong with the ball. Guys are hacking. They're coming across his arms. They're pushing him from behind. Everything else, and some of those are going to get called and some of those aren't. And he's just going to have to continue to work through it. But again, he's a freshman. It's a freshman. It's okay that you don't know everything right now. It's okay. And the last was don't let Marquette get second and thirds. And I thought it was more of win rather than the number. And what I mean by that is they got 12 offensive rebounds. I felt like it was when they got the offensive rebounds more than the number 12. Even though 12 is not a good number, and no one says it is, but it was the win. They got it in times where Georgetown needed to stop. There was one time they got, I think, either one or two offensive rebounds in a possession that ended up with a three. When Georgetown had the rebound, there was three of them there, and they kind of fumbled with each other, and Marquette got it, and then they kicked it out to the three-point line, and then they get a three. It's like stuff like that, those hidden points that in a 68-64 game, like those are like difference makers. They're difference makers. So, I mean, that's going back through the keys. Now, just the game in general, I thought that Georgetown did a lot of good things, and I think this is where Georgetown's bench, being rather short, kind of hurt them. There were times I felt like if they could get more production off of the bench, it would have helped, and some guys wouldn't have necessarily been in foul trouble that were in foul trouble. Maybe they're a little bit fresher at the end. Maybe they don't get beat off the dribble in a straight line drive because they've had ample amount of rest. But, to be honest with you, Jordan Burks started out being a heavy contributor, and then it became diminishing returns because he needs to grow out of some of the on-court immaturity. Curtis Williams Jr., I thought, did a good job. In fact, I think, as time is going on, he has been a major contributor off of the bench, which is what they envisioned during the spring and summer, by the way. And he's gotten off to a slower start, but he's starting to get it up. And if you listen to my interview with him, the one-on-one I had, he alluded to it. There were some things that he needed to do, some things that he needed to change. So he took responsibility and accountability. But now you're kind of seeing what Georgetown envisioned. And by the way, he had a wide open three, which was a good three that would have given Georgetown a 1-point lead going down the stretch. He just missed it. And that happens. It's not a video game. It's not a video game. If you release the button at the exact right time that it automatically goes in, it's not a video game. It was a great look. I thought it was a good possession. And it's a shot that is his shot. It's not anything to get upset about simply because it wasn't the result that you wanted. But he gave them 26 big minutes off of that. I thought this was Caleb Williams' worst game. And that's not to say he didn't contribute in ways. I just thought this was the first time that when he came to the game, he looked like a freshman. I thought maybe the game was a little too fast. I thought maybe the bodies were a little too strong. And that's something that he'll deal with because he's a guy who is not a guy who builds his game off athleticism. It's built here. And he's good at anticipation and knowing where to be and knowing his angles and all those things that you try to tell kids you need to be good at. He's good at those things. But I just thought last night wasn't his night. Mac, it'll come down to the turnovers, the 5 turnovers. The last one will always be the one that people will remember where he just flat out lost ball in his own. But there was others, post-entry passes that were turnovers or deflections and those type of things. So this is something that he's being asked to do that he had never been asked to do. So it's that combination of being a facilitator on a power conference level along with, being able to score, especially with Epps out, they need his points too. And that's a delicate balance for someone, again, who is young. So this certainly is not a criticism of him. That's for sure. But I did like Cooley's press conference at the end. I totally agree with him. I think there was a lot of positives out of this. And I know it doesn't feel positive when you lose, and no one wants to hear about that because the only thing they want to do is look at your record. You lost it. I'm telling you, that game last night, I give Georgetown a ton of credit. They played what is currently the best team in the Big East on the road, had a 14-point halftime lead, watch it all dissipate, watch Marquette take it over, and then punch their way back into the fight. And for a team of this age, hey guys, that's not bad. It's not bad. But what they need to do is they do need Epps healthy. At this point, there's nothing you can do about not really truly having a traditional primary ball handler. You just got to make do with what you got. And you got to make do with what you got when you turn around Saturday when you have to play UConn. I told you this is a 4-game stretch that's important for Georgetown. We're going to learn a lot about them. It started out with the Xavier game where they had a good home win. This game where they had a tough road loss. and then UConn at home and St. John's on the road. That's going to tell a lot. St. John's got a good win last night against Xavier at Xavier, so that was a good win for them too. So, but what we're seeing is we're seeing what Cooley can do to a program and the things that he can bring in and why he's had the success that he had. So all these people who wanted them to pile on him and throw dirt onto a grave after 1 year in a bad situation that was not of his doing, go ahead and start backing up off of that. So again, Marquette 68, Georgetown 64. You will see me again, obviously on Saturday when Georgetown plays UConn. This is Marcus Washington, MTC.